Alright, hi guys. We are going to be working on lesson 3 of module 2 today, cycling of matter. Our focus question, how does matter flow through an ecosystem? Hopefully by the end of this video, you will be able to answer that question. Here are your new vocabulary words. Not a whole lot of them, but it is very important that you understand what they mean. If you haven't done your vocabulary yet, pause the video, go complete that activity, and then come back. Our vocabulary review, the word cycle, a series of events that occur in a regular, repeating pattern. We're going to be looking at a few different cycles today, so I hope you will keep in mind that it happens in a regular, repeating pattern. Cycles in the biosphere. Natural processes cycle matter and nutrients through the biosphere. Remember, the biosphere is the part of Earth where living things can be found, where they live. Matter is anything that takes up space and has mass. A nutrient is a chemical substance that an organism needs to obtain from its environment in order to survive. So these are the things that we need to eat in order to stay alive. They can be in large quantities, like carbohydrates and proteins and lipids, or very small amounts like vitamins and minerals that you may take in a vitamin supplement. Whenever I was a kid, it was those Flintstones little vitamins that tasted like chalk. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember that or not. The cycling of nutrients through the biosphere involves both living organisms and physical processes. The exchange of matter through the biosphere is called the biogeochemical cycle. Bio meaning living, geo meaning rock, chemical meaning chemical. So it involves a lot of different processes, and it is a cycle, which means that it is repeating and it happens in a set series. The water cycle. Hopefully you discussed this in middle school or last year with Mrs. Lewis. It is when water evaporates from bodies of water, from soil, or from organisms, like whenever we sweat. Okay, it goes up into the air, forms condensation in the form of a cloud, and returns to the atmosphere returns from the atmosphere in the form of precipitation. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because you should have spent quite a bit in middle school. So here is a diagram. Okay, take a minute to refamiliarize yourself with this. Remember that energy comes from the sun. Okay, that is what gives the water the energy to evaporate. Once it cools down, once it loses some of that energy, it forms condensation. When enough condensation is in one area, it will fall to the earth as precipitation, where it goes into oceans, into lakes, streams, or it can percolate down through the soil into groundwater, where it is stored. Okay, you'll notice that trees are giving off water in the form of transpiration. All right, so they take in water through their roots, and it travels up through the trunk, through the limbs into the leaves. It's like a giant soda straw just constantly sucking water from the roots up through the leaves. Okay, trees and plants are always going through this transpiration process. That's how they distribute water throughout. So take a minute, study the diagram, and we'll move on. Two more cycles in the biosphere, the carbon and oxygen cycles. Carbon and oxygen recycle relatively quickly through living organisms. This is done through the processes of photosynthesis and cellular respiration. Okay, those are important parts of the cycle. Don't worry, we are going to spend some time talking about photosynthesis and about cellular respiration. So don't worry, we'll get to those in time. Carbon and oxygen enter a long-term cycle when they combine to form calcium carbonate, which is found in a lot of different rock forms. So once they are in that rock form, they stay there for a very, very, very long time. Otherwise, they are going through this relatively quick cycle. All right, so here is a diagram of that cycle. Okay, you'll notice that it goes down into the ocean. It is stored there for a while. It can fall to the bottom in the form of sediments. It can be in the form of bicarbonate, where it cycles through organisms down here like coral. Okay, it can then go back up into the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide. You'll notice plants are going through photosynthesis and respiration, which is that quick cycle that we talked about on the last slide. Humans are currently increasing the amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere through combustion. A lot of this combustion comes from coal and oil deposits that were made many years ago. Okay, we are pulling them out of the earth and burning them, which is breaking them down into smaller components and putting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. All right, we're going to talk about this some more in class. So just keep this in mind, take a moment to study the diagram, and then we will move on. Okay, another important cycle is the nitrogen cycle. The capture and conversion of nitrogen into a form that is usable by plants is called nitrogen fixation. When farmers fertilize their soil, a lot of times they're putting nitrogen into that soil because that is something that plants need. But plants aren't really good at putting it into the soil. Okay, they're really good at sucking it up, but they need it to survive, and there's only so much in the soil. All right, there are some plants that do put nitrogen back into the soil. Peanuts are one of them. Okay, they take nitrogen from the air, they go through a chemical process and put it back into the soil. Nitrogen is also fixed by bacteria or electrical storms. So lightning will take nitrogen in the air, and because there's so much energy, it causes that nitrogen to go through a chemical reaction, and then it's after that chemical reaction, it's in a form that plants can use, and it will fall to the earth. Okay, it's fixed by bacteria that live in the ground. Okay, remember, bacteria aren't always a bad thing. Okay, they get a bad rap in society today, but we really do need bacteria. Nitrogen returns to the atmosphere through denitrification, which is a process in which bacteria convert fixed nitrogen back into nitrogen gas. So remember, both good and bad bacteria, but we definitely need bacteria to put it back into the soil. All right, and here is a diagram of the nitrogen cycle. Okay, notice that there is a cycle down here. All right, living things, all right, they die, they decay, they break down by decomposers. They are then broken down even further by the bacteria and used again by living things. Okay, also some of it ends up in the atmosphere. Okay, an electrical storm happens, nitrogen is then falling back to the earth. All right, it's a very complex cycle. There are lots and lots of steps, so we're going to spend some time talking about it in class again. So take a moment to study the diagram. All right, think of any questions that you may have that you want to ask in class tomorrow. If you have any, go ahead, write them down in the margins or at the bottom of your notes page. Okay, another cycle, the phosphorus cycle. It is essential for the growth and development of organisms. Phosphorus is a very important element in living things. Okay, it cycles quickly as phosphates through sediments, plants, and consumers. In addition, phosphorus is weathered or eroded from rocks and then added to the cycle. All right, a diagram of the phosphorus cycle. All right, see this cycle going through the biotic community. Okay, that's through living things. Okay, so take a moment, study the diagram, think of any questions that you have. Go ahead, write them down in the margin on the bottom of the page.